Is it time for Iowa to make a change at the quarterback position? The head man, Kirk Ferentz, has his thoughts today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked on Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked on Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Ultimate College Football HC is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Begin your coaching legacy today. Well, Kirk Ferentz has a legacy as the head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes, though plenty of frustration coming on the heels of the loss to Iowa State on Saturday, 2019. We talked about the decisions earlier in the week and exactly how that played out, but one big question still looms, and that is, of course, what is going to happen going forward at the quarterback position? Cade McNamara struggled mightily. We talked about the numbers, 5 of his last 18 over the final 3 quarters of the game. That's coming on the back of game 1, where he struggled through most of the first half in that one before figuring things out in the second half, albeit against Illinois State. Well, it is another matchup that Iowa is a big favorite. It is Troy coming up this week. And though Troy won 11 games a year ago, this is not the same outfit from a season ago. New coaching staff, a lot of turnover. Iowa a more than 3 touchdown favorite now at FanDuel in this one against Troy. This should be a laugher, but it's Iowa. It's Iowa football, and we know not to get ahead of ourselves against any opponent. That leads to the quarterback question. And Cade McNamara, we talk about his struggles. The reason that we're having this conversation is because Iowa went out after seeing what happened a year ago when McNamara went down and just how depleted they were at that position. And we had to watch 8 games of Deacon Hill, and it was atrocious. And it took forever to make a change. It took late in a blowout against Tennessee in the bowl game before we finally saw the freshman Marco Lainez out there. Joe Labus was sitting on the sidelines. His week 2 performance, not nearly what it was in week 1. But it's Kirk Ferentz and quarterbacks. And I've maintained for a long time, there is something about the quarterback position and the way that Kirk Ferentz dictates playing time at that position that's unlike anything that I've seen in football, really at any level. The amount of rope, the amount of slack that he gives to his starting quarterback is completely different. You look at a perfect example this weekend. Xavier Wampa made a terrible play. He was benched. We saw Cade McNamara make a terrible play. The interception at the beginning of the second half. Just terrible throw, terrible decision, all those things. As he was throwing it back across his field, he's not going to be benched. Now, I understand also quarterback is a different position. Quarterback, there is leadership. There are other components to the quarterback position. It's why it's the most important position in sports. It's the most dissected, and you have a lot more to it than just simple a safety on one side, right? It's different when you're talking about this position. But you look back historically, and the crazy thing is early in Kirk Ferentz's career, there was a ton of change. There were guys coming in and out. There were a lot of different players that had opportunities in the early portion. Now they were searching for answers. I get that. But this offense is searching for answers. This program offensively is searching for answers. And we look at what's happened in recent history, but this is not some kind of new phenomenon. This is not something that has just come out of the blue over the last 5 or 6 years. No, this is a long-term conversation. It begins in 2001. And probably for many people, at least us older folks, we remember the frustration that was there as you see Brad Banks. Unlike a quarterback that we'd seen in Iowa City, a guy with athleticism, speed, a guy that turned out to be the Heisman runner-up in 2002. And Kirk talked a lot about Brad Banks today. Now, he was talking about most of it going back to their loss in 2002 to Iowa State, how they bounced back from that and how they grew from that. And he was a big component as Brad Banks had a couple of fumbles in the second half of the game. Iowa blows a big lead 24-7 in that one. Very similar to what happened on Saturday. But Kyle McCann was the starter. Now, you look back at Kyle McCann's stats that year, and boy, would we sign up for that. 16 touchdown passes, nearly 2,000 yards. Banks added another 600 himself in the backup role. But they did different things. They put together different packages and different things that was simplified. It was not the full offense, but something that you could take his advantage of his skills. And now you have Brendan Sullivan, and the way that he is a bigger, more mobile quarterback. Now, I still believe that the gap as a thrower is pretty big, but you have a guy that does have a different skill set. And when you're searching for answers and you're trying to find a different way, it makes a whole lot of sense. I was happy to see Kirk say something that we all know, but it at times needs to be said out loud. When talking about a change of pace guy, going with somebody like Sullivan, he said, quote, "We'll keep an open mind to anything if it'll help us win games." You want him to say that. And he said the right thing there. But history tells us he will not make a change. He will not make a change until it is clear to everybody in the world, 8 billion people, before he's going to have this thing figured out. We've just seen it happen too many times. Mentioned Brad Banks, Kyle McCann. McCann was the better quarterback that year, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that will argue with that. He was the better quarterback and the better quarterback for that team. He completed 65% of his passes. Think of a quarterback in Iowa completing 65% of his passes. Brad Banks, and then, well, we haven't had one. Not over the course of a season. 65% completion percentage, and that was in a different era of college football. That was elite. And boy, would we sign up for Kyle McCann right now. Maybe even in his 40s, we'd still sign up for Kyle McCann. But going through historically, Jake Christensen to Ricky Stanzi, it took a ton. I mean, it was pulling teeth in order to get there. Jake Rudock, CJ Beathard, Spencer Petras, and whoever else. Alex Padilla, Joey Labus, Marco Linus, Deacon Hill, Marco Linus. We had all these things. For whatever reason, Kirk Ferentz, when it comes to quarterbacks and put him on the bench, it doesn't happen. Do I anticipate that we're going to see Sullivan outside of blowout minutes? I don't right now. And I think that's disappointing. It's disappointing because this is your last tune-up. This is your last opportunity before Big Ten plays, and you have to see what you have. And I'm not talking Iowa's coasting and they're up 27-3 in the fourth quarter, and here comes Sullivan. No, that's not what we're talking about here. Getting him reps in the first half, getting him reps early in the second half, getting him an opportunity with the first team offense. And when the game is at least somewhat in doubt, I think it's too important. Because the Cade McNamara that we saw on Saturday, the Cade McNamara that we saw for the first 27 minutes the Saturday before, he's not good enough right now. He missed too many throws. The offensive line has been good. The offensive line has been playing at an elite level. And when you have those components, and we're seeing that, it has to go through your mind that you have to make a change. Will they? Likely not. Now, I'm not saying that Cade McNamara needs to be benched. And I still maintain and I still believe that Iowa, to hit the heights that we want to see out of this team still this year, that he is the quarterback that has to do it. Watching this summer, Brendan Sullivan. There's some good performances, and then there's some clunkers in there. I think his skill set does not marry exactly with what they want to do, with what Tim Lester wants to do offensively. In a pinch, injury happens to McNamara, absolutely. That's why he went out and got him. The problem is I don't know if Cade McNamara can get back to that point. I don't know if Cade McNamara can get back to the guy that we saw at Michigan, who also had his own set of issues at that time. And he was a guy that overall, Michigan fans certainly weren't sad because they had a first-round draft pick in J.J. McCarthy that took over the starting role. They knew what they had there. But the other component with it was just this, that Iowa as a whole, this Iowa program and what they are and what they're going to be, it's tough. It's tough to swallow, but it's where we are. Cade will be the guy on Saturday. We'll see from there. Let's get into one final thing. Each week we go through the numbers from Pro Football Focus and take a look at what they say about the grades for the game. this week against Iowa State. I will tell you, these numbers are not pretty. We'll get into that as we continue. Plus, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic joins us. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. Well, as we make our way through this college football season, Hawkeye fans, you want to give yourself an opportunity to maybe do what you've always wanted to do. Check out this brand new game. It is Ultimate College Football HC. I've started playing a couple of weeks ago. It is awesome. This simulation lets you step into the shoes of the head coach. You can be Kirk Ferentz for your favorite college football program and lead them to glory. Can you imagine being the coach of the Hawkeyes and all these decisions we talk about? Well, you'll be the one that's second guess. From recruiting players, hiring coaching staff, overseeing training camps, handling scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program all in your hands. And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but it'll shape the future legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want, when you want. And of course, we got a special offer for you here, Locked On Hawkeye fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, Locked On CFB, inside the game store and receive a free boost to your program. Make sure you take advantage of this and get your team off to a strong start. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com, ultimate-cfb.com, or you can look it up in the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is also brought to you by Gametime. I love the Gametime app. Got a game coming up this week at Kinnick Stadium. Maybe you're looking forward, making the trip north up to Minnesota, coming up here in a couple of weeks. Whatever it is, they got you covered with great tickets. Gametime picks, filters out the fluff, and shows you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Find exactly the kind of ticket that you want for the game and not have to worry about all those extras. I love the ability also with the Gametime app of the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature up front shows you that total up front. No surprise fees at checkout. That can be so frustrating on some of the apps out there. All-in pricing, absolutely incredible what they have going for you at Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and make sure you redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That'll get you $20 off at Gametime. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Trent Condon back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. All right, final look back here at the disaster that was Saturday and your numbers from Pro Football Focus. Now, I always put this caveat in here. This is one set of eyes. This is one guy that is normally just grading these games and going through. I just like to see if it exactly marries with what we're seeing, what I'm seeing in the course of the game. And I think it gives you, at minimum, a little bit of a jumping off point exactly to see what it is. So, Cade McNamara, his grade was brutal. 35.5 overall, a 32.3 pass rating. That is Deacon Hill territory. After posting a huge number the week before, over a 90, it goes down in a big-time way. Cade McNamara struggled mightily. There were open throws that he missed. The pressure was not relevant, and he just could not find a way. That one, he can't have it. And this is a number that shows you, I believe, that you need to be thinking about what is next if it continues down this path for Cade McNamara. Caleb Johnson, your top-ranked running back, no surprise after his monster performance, a 76.3 overall. Kamari Moulton with a 62.6, LaShawn Williams a 58.6. I will be interested to see how the playing time continues to divvy up. We talked about the inexplicable decision to have Caleb sitting on the sidelines for those goal-to-go situations in the first half of the football game. We will see going forward. I have a feeling, though, we saw it in the second half, you get Caleb Johnson in there, in those goal lines, yeah, pretty good. 187 in the game for him. Hayden Large graded out pretty well at the fullback position, a 72.6. Pretty good on that front. Wide receivers, not good. Jacob Gill is 65.7. That number would be a lot better if Cade McNamara would have found him wide open in the end zone. TJ Washington, Troy Washington Jr., just moved over from running back. He was your second graded guy with a 60.7. Now we're talking about guys that didn't get the ball coming their way, and when they did, it wasn't close. Down towards the bottom, you got Caleb Brown, Caden Weegan, 54 and 53 respectively for their grades. Vanderzee, this is going to be a learning process. He was going up against some talented defensive backs for Iowa State. We're going to see some more growth, though, I believe, out of the true freshman. At the tight end position, Zach Ortworth, your top-ranked running back. Then Addison Ostrenga. Then Johnny Pacuzzi. Before we finally get to preseason, all Big Ten tight end, Luke Lachey. Now, of course, he had 4 targets come his way. None of them ended up in his hands. A lot of blame goes to the quarterback for that. But it wasn't just that. Run blocking grade, very low, a 54.4. Can't have it. Got to have more. Going up against bracket coverage, got to find a way. Have to find a way. He's too important to this offense to be there. And the offensive line is solid. Let's just put it solid. Logan Jones, your top-ranked guy with a 72. Mason Richmond with a 70. He was second. His pass blocking grade, though, is excellent with an 88. Bo Stevens also excellent in pass protection with an 86.3 for him. Jennings Dunker, a little bit lower down the list. He is 4th on this list, followed up by Connor Colby. Those two were surprising to me. I thought they'd be a tick higher than what we saw. Not the case of Nick DeYoung, who came in with a 53. Pass blocking grade, pretty good. Run blocking, not so much. Paint it all together, not pretty. Not pretty at all for the Iowa offense. How about the defense? It's not a ton better. Ethan Herkett, your top-ranked defensive lineman with a 74, 72 for Brian Allen. He's continuing to show, I think, an emergence and a growth this season that we've been waiting for. Followed up by Max Llewellyn, Jeremiah Pittman. I thought he was pretty good in the snaps that I keyed in on him, both watching the review of the game on Sunday night, along with being there in person on Saturday. I thought he played solid. Y.A. Black, really good against the run and tackling. Pass rush, not a specialty. He is a big space eater in the middle. Aaron Graves, disappointing, and maybe the biggest disappointment, Deontay Craig. That defensive line for Iowa, they got whooped at times in the second half. And just, you can't have that. Working with the lead, a disappointing performance, I thought, overall, out of that group up front. The linebackers, Jay Higgins was the best player on the football team with a 92.4 grade. Run defense an 82. Coverage a 93, had that interception. Kyler Fisher, who played a ton in this one, he grades out with a 77. Saw Jaden Harrell out there just for a few plays. He was next, followed up by Nick Jackson. Not his best game. Run defense is where his issues in tackling were down a little bit lower at the linebacker core. And finally, at the defensive back spot, Jamari Harris is your top-ranked guy, followed by Quinn Schulte. Cohen Entringer, who came in for Xavier Wampa, he was 3rd. Sebastian Castro gave up that long play late in the game that led to the game-winning field goal. He is next up on the list. TJ Hall, look, he was right there. You can't play much better defense against Higgins in the end zone. Higgins took it away. It made just an absolute incredible play on that one. Thought he was very solid, though, at minimum. And there's Xavier Wampa, all the way down with a 40.1 rating. The numbers from Pro Football Focus. That gives you a glimpse of what we saw on Saturday, at least some metrics to measure it up. Did it meet up with your eyeballs? Few that we had some disagreements, but overall, I think paints a pretty good picture. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic, he also paints a pretty good picture for this Iowa football team. We'll talk with him when we come back. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, you hear us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. I love all the different bells and whistles that are inside the sportsbook, but we got a little something different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. You're going to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game, All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. We mentioned coming up this week, Iowa against Troy. They got you covered on that front. Of course, the Hawkeyes, as mentioned, more than a 3 touchdown favorite. 22 currently the number at FanDuel. Over under at 38.5. Do we take a peek at that one? They got you covered for that. Alabama, Wisconsin, the Badgers at Camp Randall welcome in the Crimson Tide. 16 is the number in that one, and a whole lot more on the FanDuel app. And of course, it is week 2 of the NFL. Starts up on Thursday. It's so great to have football back with it. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. And again, with a $5 bet, a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com today and download America's #1 sportsbook.
So, Doc, just really a tale of two games. It really was. I thought that, Iowa only up 13-0 at the end of the first half. Thought, they had a chance to, maybe put Iowa State away. To their credit, Iowa State kept hanging in there. McNamara makes a mistake. Higgins steals a ball from who looked as though they were going to intercept the football in the end zone. Was it Hall? I think it was.
Yeah, it was Hall.
It was Hall. It was in his hands, and then Iowa State had other plans. They just flat out took it away from him, Higgins did, and then just an improbable 54-yard field goal by a redshirt freshman kicker, making the only third kick of his career. Doc, we'll talk about this one for a long time, won't we?
Yeah, it seems like Iowa State games always have some layers to them, and this one is another one for us to chat about, obviously for the rest of this week, probably some of next week, and then in years to come. It was, as you said, a tale of two halves, a tale of two games, and you have one side that is incredibly elated, that showed incredible resiliency in coming back in a hostile environment where nothing was going its way, and kept fighting and ultimately pulled out an incredible win. And you have one team that couldn't get out of its own way, that had its shoelaces tied together for 3 quarters. And for Iowa, it's good. This is going to linger for a long time, because there's a lot here that, just drugged up a lot of different things over time that, fans are, pretty incensed right now.
A lot of frustration, a lot of different directions to go. The goal line situation, 6 plays inside the 5, get nothing out of it. Well, outside of 2 field goals. And then after showing an inability to get the ball in there, you go for 2 a quarter later to do that. And of course it goes exactly how you'd anticipate there. It just 7 plays inside the 5, nothing to show for it. Is that Tim Lester? Is that Kirk Ferentz? Where do we point the blame on? Really,
and Caleb Johnson on the sidelines.
And Caleb Johnson on the sidelines.
Yeah, everything. I think first of all, you do. Kirk doesn't call the plays. It is Tim Lester who calls the plays. They discuss everything in advance during the week. So the personnel groupings that were in there was something that was said on Wednesday and Thursday. It wasn't just decided spur of the moment. Hey, let's go with 14 personnel and do this. I think it was really, when you get down that close and you see what was working for Iowa versus what they tried to do, there was a significant disconnect. I mean, Iowa did so much better when it spread out Iowa State, and it could use its speed up front and the execution to the C gap into the edge. And yet when they get to the close to the goal line and they went all bunch with 4 tight ends, and they don't have a size advantage down there. The other team is bigger than they are up front, and that seemed pretty obvious. I mean, like the first play, when it was 1st and goal at the 1, the first play of the second quarter, and they had Johnny Pescuzzi trying to execute a down block on Dominic Orange.
Good luck.
That is a horrible, stupid matchup. I mean, you do not do that unless you're going way around him, not up the middle. And then, of course, it cost him 3 yards right away.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of those types of scenarios in those 2 goal line situations that ultimately cost Iowa, 2 touchdown opportunities. And, Iowa would have been much better served. And I've said this for a long time when they get into 3rd and 1s. Just go with your regular offense. Don't try to get big and physical because you're not big and physical. So that was something that really hurt them, obviously.
Doc, how was Iowa State able to nullify Luke Lachey?
They were all over him. I mean, they bracketed him. They had multiple players guarding him. He wasn't open on many routes, and I think that's a credit to the way that they defended him. And I think what Iowa State did so well defensively is they still, even though they were outmatched seemingly up front, if nothing else, just numbers wise, that they're able to drop guys. They recognized whether it was run or pass very quickly. And in doing so, it allowed multiple defenders to kind of shield Luke Lachey and not allow him to be in a route open. And Iowa also did a very poor job of getting him the ball. They should have found ways. It's not that hard to find a quick pass to get him the ball, and they did not do that. So I thought that was the scheme that Iowa State had was really good. They had great personnel. Their strength is in their safeties, no question. Freeler is one of the best in the country, and so they just they did an outstanding job there. And then overall, their coverage, blanketed Iowa's receivers.
Doc, late game situation. Both the decision not to use a timeout to take the 5-yard penalty with a punter that had struggled most of his first 2 games, coupled with run-and-man defense late in that football game, a team without a timeout to get down the field. Those 2 choices by Ferentz and then by Phil Parker, your takeaways on that front.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the punter was fine, so I'm not going to criticize him as far as that goes. I think there were a couple of situations in the final 2 minutes. One is there was a terrible clock error that I'm looking into with the Big 12, which is there was about a 15-second differentiation when Caleb Johnson, right after the sneak, after the 2-minute warning, where they stopped the game clock, but then they allowed the play clock to keep going.
I didn't notice that.
And so that was pretty significant. Yeah. So, and this is a Big 12 ref game as opposed to Big 10 because the visitors have that. So that was significant. When you let the extra second go, I thought that 1 second was worth more than 5 yards at that point. And it's easy to just kind of throw it up in the air and say, well, what's the difference? Well, it turns out the difference on a 54 and a 59-yard field goal is pretty significant. And so deciding not to use the timeout versus, punting and let the clock expire was big. And then I thought Phil got a little arrogant. His Sebastian Castro is a really good safety, and he's like Rodney Harrison. That's probably my best description of Sebastian Castro. He's going to play in the NFL for a long time, maybe a decade. But to put him one-on-one isolated on Jalen Knoll, that's not the best matchup for him. And then to allow him to kind of get, run up and out, kind of a wheel route on him without any kind of bracketed coverage is arrogant. And I think it cost Phil in that situation. So really the brains of this was more default than the execution, I thought, other than quarterback play for Iowa.
Doc, Xavier Wampka, a lot of people, myself included, thought that there was a major step forward for him this year. And again, we're 2 games into the season, but this was alarming, and he was benched at the end of the game. As speaking of Jalen Knoll, ran right by him for that long touchdown. What's going on here with Wampka?
Well, Wampa had he should have been deeper than what he was. And he took a step forward when I don't know if he thought that Knoll was going to run, some sort of a dig route or just a slant, but instead, he's running more of a post, and he got burned. And part of it was there was no kind of reroute by the linebacker, by Jay Higgins, which should have, which could have hit him and then slowed him down a little bit. But when you get a really good receiver like that with a head of steam, you better be deeper than he is. And if you nothing else, you allow him to catch a 20-yard pass. Don't allow him to catch a 75-yard pass. And that's what happened there. Maybe, I'm not privy to what maybe has been discussed in the past and maybe in practice or something. But yeah, he was benched for the rest of the game, and Tringer came in, and And I don't know what that means for the future. I guess we'll find out for the depth chart today, and I'm sure some discussions tomorrow. But he messed up, and I've seen it before where Phil has benched somebody, but then brought him right back. I think Matt Hankins was one that they did that to a few years ago against Purdue.
So big picture now with this team.
There he is, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic joining us, and you can hear Scott Dochterman on Mondays on my radio show, Miller and Condon. He joins us each and every Monday to recap what he saw with the Iowa football team. You can catch myself and Ken Miller from noon to 2 on the Iowa Sports Radio Network, 106.3 KXNO in Des Moines, along with stations in Sioux City, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and the Quad Cities from noon to 2, talking the world of sports. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Appreciate all of you out there. We still got a busy week in front of us. And yes, it's going to be time to turn the page. The media availability from yesterday, Cade McNamara was not there. He's going to be back next week, has a scheduling conflict with some classes. Still disappointing. And even if there is a real reason behind it, just disappointing that is the case on that front. But that aside, hey, Cade McNamara, he'll be there answering questions, and let's just hope for better play, certainly this week, and better play out of the quarterback position, a better play all around, better coaching all around. Let's get better and give ourselves a little bit of hope going into Big Ten play. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to the never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search any further. All part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.